All right, welcome to today's Greco-Roman philosophy, history of Greco-Roman philosophy. So just back to the, today is the first section. We are going to talk about Aristotle. And I think last four section, we talk about Plato. So just back to our question about Aristotle, especially today's section, a lot of words we use is Latin instead of Greek. The reason is this, and Daniel, you should have, is reasonable you doubt this, because of course, Aristotle wrote it in Greek, and then later on has been discovered by Islamic scholar. So I think the Caliphate, okay, they pay money to do the translation to Arabic. So they are very serious on that. And they probably got confused. Some even call them Plato. So they thought that Aristotle's writing are Plato's writing. So during the crusade, the Christian world in the Western Europe, they start to discover this. And then they start to translate, okay, from Arabic to Latin, okay, and they got popular. So today's a lot of translation, especially this section I use, is the so-called English book, okay, the original book. But if you think through, it's from Greek to Arabic to Latin and to English. Okay, so probably that's the best I can get, unless somebody has original Greek or somebody know Arabic or somebody know Latin. So, so I think that's the story. But still, I would say pretty good. So, Adrian, right? Please.
Please kill me. I'm a faggot nigga.
Oh my God.
My gosh. So okay, Jay.
All right.
Jay, you have hands up. Jay Harper.
It's the same person.
Oh, so then okay. So let me show. You should be able to rename.
Yeah. I just have to find them.
Jay Halpern is Joan, and I think she and Adrian are the same people.
Yeah.
Okay.
That same person.
Okay, so let's start it. Okay, so let's see. Okay, today we will talk about just 1 minute. Okay, today we will. I hope everybody can see my screen. Okay. So I think we already talked about the death of Socrates, the life of Socrates, Plato. We have a 2 sections, and today and the next week we are going to talk about Aristotle. And the basics today, I'm going to be a little bit. The post reading is basics. I think that's a pretty good general introduction about Aristotle. And today I'm going to focus on the physics, metaphysics, and the organ, okay, which is a little bit more technical than next week. And the next week we are going to cover on the ethics and the politics. And then after we are going to move on to the Ionian school and the Eleatic school. And then we move on to the history. So that's the plan I'm going to do. And then the philosopher we are going to introduce. And right now we still focus on the essence. Okay, so basics is Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And then for the rest of this philosopher, basics is they don't have a lot of writing left. Basics is a fragment. So we probably can finish all this one in 2 sections. And then after Aristotle's and philosopher would be a little bit easier in my understanding, because basically each philosopher can be represented by 1 book. So we just go through book by book, so we will know the philosophy. So about the geographic area, we were talking about basically we limit on the non-Greek world, which is including Athens, Asia Minor on the Italian side, and then and some Romans. Okay, so on this one. So let me take care of one thing first. Okay. All right, so next section. Okay, so all the information I provide is based on the book. So we cover more. Well, that's all the Plato's dialogue we cover for the last 4 sections, and that's Aristotle. Also has a lot of book. And then we try to cover the metaphysics, physics, and the organon. And the next week, we try to cover the Nicomachean Ethica, or that's his famous ethics, and the poetic, and mostly politics and ethics. That's next week we're going to cover. Okay, so I generally separate the school to the Athens, Ionian school, and the Eleatic school, and the atomism and the Stoicism. Okay, so that's the different school I like to cover within about, I think it's about 10-12 weeks. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Aristotle, and then if you have question or anything, it's a time, you can raise your hand, and then. Okay, so otherwise I will start it. Okay, that's always because Aristotle, that's the first section about Aristotle, and then let me give a brief introduction of his life. Okay, so he was born on 384 BC, and when he was 17 years old, he went to
Athens.
Athens, and then become the student of Plato. And then let me see, and then when Plato retired, okay, about when Aristotle was 37 years old, and he went back to on the north, okay, and then because and he became a tutor of the Alexander, and when he was 48, and Alexander became king of Macedonia. And Alexander have, I think we all know Alexander's story, and then Aristotle went to Athens, set up his school, Lycean school, and then sometimes you will see we call it a peripatetic school, because he is not Athens, so Athenian citizen, so he cannot own property. That's why his school has to, he cannot set up like academia, like academy, like Plato. So when Aristotle was 61 years old, and that's also the death of Alexander, and they have some
Excuse me?
They don't like Macedonians stay in Athens, so that's why Aristotle had to leave, and then he died. Okay, so I think that's the general.
Excuse me?
Excuse me?
Yeah, how did he die?
He died in the natural course. We don't know. Yeah, he died in the natural course. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
How though?
He said natural causes.
Yes, natural causes. In the general, I don't, unless you heard anything, but I don't see anything new. Most of the people just say he died from natural causes, and of course we don't know for sure.
Bianca.
Okay, so today that's Aristotle has a lot of writing, and then I list here, and then kind of we can separate it in 2 groups, right? One is more technical, like logic, metaphysics, and the physics, and then another part is about the politics and the ethics. So we can cover the next week. So of course they have some overlap, and then the book, the name is about logic, is so-called organon, and organon it means method, and it's important because on the 16th century, Francis Bacon wrote the Nuam Organon, which means new method. Okay, so that's another thing. So, and the metaphysics and the physics is a lot of overlap. And then the reason we call metaphysics today, just because when people discover Aristotle's physics, after that, people find a few writing and they don't know how to name it because they find after physics. So they call it the metaphysics. And
Are they still discovering them today?
Excuse me? Who is speaking?
Oh, somebody spoke.
Yeah, let me see who.
It might have been Bianca, but I don't know.
Is it
Somebody
David?
called Anthony Smart, but
Okay, I'm going to mute everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to mute everyone.
No, you're not gonna do that. All right.
Okay, Anthony. Okay, get rid of Anthony, please. Yeah.
Great.
Let me see.
Yeah, he's out.
He's out. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so so that's continue. Okay. Okay, let's start from organon. Okay, so I think the organon is extremely important, at least in my point of view, because we call Aristotle as the father of logic. And if when we read Plato's dialogue, I think anyone who reads this one will know, will complain, actually, the general complaint about Plato's dialogue is why you write so much and then cannot make it everything shorter and cleaner. I think the reason is Aristotle, hold on, let me do this. Aristotle haven't start his logic yet. That's why, Plato has no idea or has no tool to make his statement clear. So when we read Aristotle, we will find out the reading become much easier. I'm not saying easy, but become much easier. You don't have to deal through like Plato's dialogue, talking about one thing all over the place, and you find out it's not systematic. And I think that's the great contribution from Aristotle. And the book we call the Organon, basically included, is compiled of 6 treatises. First is Category on interpretation. Basically, he's talking about proposition. And the proposition, by definition, Aristotle's definition, and also today's definition, means a statement which you can verify as yes or no. If I say today is a sunny day, then it could be true or not true, right? So we call it a proposition. I say this cup is blue, it could be true or not true, okay? So it's a proposition. If I say, please give me a cup of coffee, which is no true or not true, so it's not a proposition. So that's clearly defined by Aristotle and has been used to today. And the number 3 is syllogism. I'm going to spend more time on this one, and that's we call it logic today. And of course, today we don't use that syllogism that much, but it's built in our logic, modern logic today. So that's very important. And another thing you may see is a topic, which is opinions. And then if you remember when Plato talked about his allegory of cave, if the person being shackled in the cave only see the shadow, and Plato called the shadow, the people you have seen, it's just opinion. It's not truth. It's not knowledge. You have to break out, okay, get out of shackles and going out to see the truth. So one question is, how do you get out from seeing the shadow and to see the real things? So Plato provides the tool, which is a syllogism. That's he is talking about. So that's the 6 treatises Aristotle is trying to achieve. And the last one, of course, also important is the fallacies. He tried to refute every sophist argument. The basics is talking about the logic is untrue. That's what he tried to do. Okay. So let's start from 10 categories. Okay. So I'm going through these 10 categories. Remember, when we talk about proposition, okay, each proposition we have a subject and the predicate. Subject, let's say this cup is blue. This cup is a subject, and the blue is a predicate. And his 10 category basics is talking about predicate. So you will see very clear that's Aristotle's style. He tried to exhaust all the possibility and give explanation each single one. That's his concept of category. So he said only 10 categories. There's no more. It's complete. And I think that's a new concept in the world. And before Aristotle, probably don't have this kind of concept. So his 10 category, you can separate as substance and the non-substance. So the first one is substance. So what is substance? Substance is something you can call it universal. For example, this is cup. Cup is a substance. Okay. So you see that running animal is a dog. So dog is a substance because you are not talking about a specific dog. You are talking about a general idea. We call it the universal. So that's substance. Then they have the 9 more things we call non-substance. So we can look at this way. First is quantity. You say, let's use Einstein. Okay. Einstein is 1. Okay, it's only 1 Einstein. So that's quantity. And then quality. Okay, is something. Remember, Aristotle is a scientist, biologist. So he is very clear and has a lot of study about the nature world. That's why he comes with this 10 categories. So quality is talking about the color. For example, Einstein have a gray hair. Okay, so that's the quality of Einstein. Or the dog have 4 legs. That's the quality. Relation. Okay, so you can talk about, because you can talk about somebody or something with related to other things, right? So you can talk about, like, Aristotle is the student of Plato. So you build relationship between Aristotle and Plato. Marika, you have a question? Or you have something to say?
Yeah, this is like the non-substance will be the attributes, the qualities.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's you can call it the attribute, but its attribute is not all, right? Because there's a quantity, quality, and then also have a relationship, right? Because you can describe somebody, right? Like, let's say Plato. Plato is the teacher of Aristotle. Okay.
But it looks like a description of the substance, right?
It's a description, yes. That's what we call it the predicate.
Thank you.
Okay, so number 5 is talking about the place. Okay, so you can talk about Aristotle is in Athens. Okay, Einstein teach in Princeton, University of Princeton. Okay, so that's described as place. Okay, and you can talk about time, right? Socrates was killed at 399 BC. So that's the time you can describe. And then the rest will become a little bit complex. Okay, so for example, being in a position, and I think it's a proper translation. You probably will see different kind of translation. Some way to call it is a posture. So you talk about one thing, right? For example, you can see, for example, Einstein was standing. Okay, so that's his position. Socrates was sitting. Okay, so that's describe the person's posture. And another thing we can translate so-called wherein or condition. It's talking about not his own posture. It's talking about something outside on him. For example, John is wear a hat, right? That's something. Jason wear glasses. So that's another way to describe. So we call it wearing or condition. And the number 9 is sometimes called being, sometimes called doing or action. So what action the person or the thing is doing? That dog is running. So that's an action, right? And number 10 talk about being affected. So another way to call it affection. So he's talking about some doing is the subject is doing something to outside. And the being affected is the subject has been affected by something outside. So that means, for example, I feel hot, okay? Socrates feel cold, okay? So this kind of feeling, I'm angry. So that's something, you know.
Yo, Greg, turn your
Okay, so who is next?
turn your camera off right now, buddy. You're bald to me with that dome. You're a fight.
That's Julia. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think next time I'm going to change the setup. So okay, today's not the lucky day. Okay, sorry about this. So
You know, I'm not gonna let anyone in anymore because
yeah, probably we have enough
that's-
people.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's a safe way. And then I just have to say, next, I'm going to reset the security on the Zoom server.
no, I think we're okay right now, but
Okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, just don't let. I have to set up in the way if you're being kicked out, you have no way to enter again. So
that's probably
yeah,
I don't know
because
how you do that.
yeah, I have to apologize on this because we have a serious Zoom bombing. So we unfortunately we kick out a lot of innocent people. So I received a few complaints that they cannot get in anymore. So I changed the security, you know. So I think I have to change back, you know. And since we have 24, I think that's a good number. So that's back to the subject. And then anybody have any comment or question or anything want to discuss about 10 categories? I think this 10 categories is important. You may not find it useful, but basics, it's a good way to think about anything. If you have, you know, look at this 10 category, it's not random and it's pretty complete. I have to say, I feel it's very complete. And that's the style Aristotle is doing. Is any comment or question or anybody want to discuss about 10?
Here is Spencer is asking a question in chat. Is
Okay.
this, yeah, let me see what it said. These have later significance with Kant, right?
Yes, I'm going to talk about Kant. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Kant later. Yes, because a lot of things in Aristotle we don't see directly, but you will see in the Enlightenment period a lot of philosophy. You know, you can see the how Aristotle influenced to this kind of people. And another thing, I think I should talk this one first. Basics is Katie. You have a question or?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm confused about how substance and matter, what the difference between those things are, because I think I'm
Substance and the matter. Okay, I will cover soon. Okay, because we are only in category. Okay, so if I forget it, just remind me one more time. So subject and predicate. Okay, so I think he lists some. This one is basically talking about the particular and the universal. Okay, so you can say this is a man, right? So that's a particular. If you point on something, right? Okay, and if you can say man is an animal, and when you talk about man, you talk about the universal. You can say this man is European. Okay, so when you say this man, you talk about particular. Okay, so this man is a substance, and you can also the non-substance also can be particular or universal. You can say this you can point, right? This color is white. You are talking about particular color. And you can say white is a color or white is shining. Okay, so you are talking about universal. So he kind of separate the particular and the universal, and which become for next 2000 years is a subject people are discussing. So this one also a famous chapter, and I probably don't have to go to too much detail. Basically, he separate with the substance and the non-substance, and separate from the particular and the universal. So without going into detail, I show this one basics. I hope everyone get the idea. That's the method is totally different from Plato's method. That's the way he doing everything. Okay. So let me answer is that Spencer's question about Kant, right? So that's Kant, the critique of pure reason. Kant specifically said, okay, when Kant talk about judgment, actually he's talking about proposition. So he said, Kant in his critique of pure reason, he said that there's only, he do it based on Aristotle's 10 categories. And he said they only have 12 different kind of judgment. It's also complete. So you can see Kant follow Aristotle's style. And I don't know how he do it, but Kant's the way to do it is, I think it's very complete. He put it in the 12 different categories. And from the 12 different kind of judgment, he create 12 different categories. So that's the Kant development based on Aristotle. So Spencer, do I answer your question? Or you want to talk more about Kant? Okay, so I think
yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So before I move to another subject, and any question or anything, or anyone want to discuss a little bit about the category and his universal and the particular? Otherwise, I'm going to another one. If you find out this one is too technical or something, just please hold on for 20, 30 minutes. And I promise that's the only section on this. And probably in the philosopher I know, probably only Aristotle. And I don't see anyone have this kind of thing until Bertrand Russell have this kind of thing. So, which is much later. So, I think in the reading, if you read it, you will find out they talk about square of opposition. Okay, so so-called AEIO. Okay, so we have to know this before we go to the syllogism. Okay, so basics when we talk about A, we talk about that's sort of all men are mortal. Okay, so all S are P. All people are animal. So that's A, right? E means I deny in Latin. Okay, so talking about no people can fly. No SRP. Okay, so that's E. I means particular affirmative. Okay, so some SRP. Okay, or you can say one SRP. Some people are blind. Okay. Socrates is a man. Okay, so this kind of thing. Okay. So particular negation. So some people are not smart. Okay, some S are not P. So then we form a square. We call the A, E, I, O. Okay, so A and the E we call it the contrary. Okay, so all people are animal, and no people can no people can fly. This kind, or we want to say no people are animal. Okay, so that's the contrary. Okay, and if you A and O we call it the contradictory. So that means O can negate a proposition. So that's the 4 different kind of proposition we have, no more. Okay, we have 4 different kind of proposition, and then Aristotle separate as A, E, I, O, and of course A, E, I, O is the name during the Roman time. In the Europe, people name it in Latin, but Aristotle doesn't use this name. But the concept is there: contrary and contradictory, and that's the basics for the syllogism. So I hope it's clear, but if you have a question, please raise your hand. So let's go through the very first syllogism, the very simple one, if you want to understand what is a syllogism. Okay, Daniel, you have a question? Oh.
I won't have a question, but I mean, one of the points that I'm wondering how Aristotle, if he dealt at all with probabilities, or let's say something like based, conditional, the chances that it'll rain, the chances that this will happen. This sounds to me like the logic is all about talking absolute. It either is or isn't, but does he deal with probabilities beyond some people are?
He deals with probability, okay, but not in organon, okay. So probability he built is in his physics, okay. And I don't remember he has a specific section. I think in physics he talk about probability, okay. He talk about the chance, okay. Something must happen, something could happen. He has separate this kind of thing. And in organon, he talk about 2 kind of proposition. Okay, he talk about this one called the categorical proposition, because everything is just say all people are animal, right? Another one is a hypothetical. Okay, you can say if something, then something. That's another proposition. Okay, so that's a 2 kind of thing he separate. And so let's go to the syllogism. The easiest one is the format, right? Premise 1 and premise 2 and the conclusion. The conclusion will be from S to P. We call it OSRP. So OM, M is the middle one, which is the idea is going to draw some conclusion from S, from this S to P, right? But we don't know the relation between S and the P. We go through the middle one, the M, and then we draw this one. And this one must be true. Just like Daniel's question, is that has a possibility? No, there's no possibility. It must be true, must be this way. So easiest way to look at is we say all men are mortal. So that's true. And you say Socrates is a man. Then, that's S, that's P. And the middle thing is man, right? So Socrates is mortal. So that's the very basic form of syllogism. So I hope, is there any question or is that clear on what is the syllogism? Marika, please.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I think in school we said A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. Saying C equals A is wrong. It has to be A equals C, or that's okay.
No, he's not dealing with this kind of so-called successive law. Okay, he's dealing with syllogism. That means you have two things. Okay, and you want to deduce to another thing, the third thing. So, for example, all men are mortal. And Socrates is a man. So Socrates must be mortal. He's going to deal with this one.
Okay.
Patty, please.
This may be a dumb or too general question, but so this is pretty essentially basic logical thinking.
Yes.
But I don't recall being taught all of these details at any given time.
Mhm.
Is this basically the way education is done in the West, or is it not done well? Because it seems like there is a predominance of, or a huge number of people that are incapable of thinking this way.
That's my personal experience, and then I really appreciate this one because if you recall, okay, if in the primary mathematics education, I think we all learned something called the Venn diagram.
Yes.
Okay, because the Venn diagram, we don't need this anymore. Okay, if I put it this way, so I will put the Venn diagram later. Will make it much clearer. But
Okay.
okay, so you might ask a question like, why do I care about this, right? But I think we should appreciate because you will know how difficult. Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate knowing more about the foundations. I'm just curious as to.
Yeah, because we don't have to learn this. We have the Venn diagram.
Right, but I'm curious as to why, at least in the United States, seems to be very ineffective at teaching this basic, these basic models. And am I missing something, or is it really much harder to teach than I remember?
I don't see it's hard to teach because we probably will assume everybody know, right? When I say all men are mortals, I will say all birds can fly, and then let's say all birds have feather. Chicken is bird, and you know, right? The chicken has a feather. Okay, so this kind of thing, I think we probably assume everybody know, and we already built in the modern language. The way I want to say this is sometimes we enjoy it and we don't know where it's coming from. Because when I read Plato's, from time to time, I find out, I ask myself a question, why, Mr. Plato, can you speak easily? Why you know? So I think if Aristotle is Plato's teacher, and Plato's dialogue would be much easier to read because he can use the language. Okay, would be much easier to understand. So that's just my opinion. I think.
Well, and yet, as we're going through this, I mean, I can see the literally logical progression, and so I think that's beautiful.
So if you compare this one with Plato, you probably will feel, at least I feel this way, it's a big improve in people's way of thinking. And then today our thinking, it's not just happened in a few years. It's through 2000 years to make it progress, to make this kind of change. Because I also host the Asian philosophy meetup. I read the ancient Chinese text, and I will find out I sometimes frustrated about they don't use, I mean, Chinese doesn't use this kind of logic in the language. So there's no if, then, this kind of concept until Buddhism go into China and people start to learn this concept and the writing become clear logically. So that's the development of the language. And you can say it's not just language, it's the way of thinking. You know?
Yes.
Okay. Jason, do you think it's represented like in algebra? I mean, it seems like it's exactly the same thing. You know, in algebra,
I don't think that's the algebra. You know, I think the algebra was related to when people learn the digital. You know, and then but
the algebra didn't exist at the time of Aristotle. But I'm just saying that if you look at the algebra, that's how all this logic is represented there.
Yeah, that's right. And same thing in the ancient Chinese. When I talk about ancient, I talk about the first century in China. They start to do algebra, and without the symbol, you will see that's so difficult to understand. You know, without the symbol. You know.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, thank you for this question. So that's why I show the Venn diagram. So remember, that's a three set, right? all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. That's the 3 lines. So remember, we talk about this one, A, E, I, O. That means the proposition have 4 different ways. You can say all men are mortal, or say some men are mortal, or say no men are mortal, or say some men are not mortal. Okay, so each one have 4 different ways to talk about. So 4 times 4 times 4, right? They have 64. And Aristotle called it 64 moods. Of course, moods is not Greek word. That's Latin, and which means 64 ways, I think. So total have 64 different moods. Okay. So of course, not all work. Okay, some of them work. So for the one you work, people give the name. So something called barber. Okay, that's the AAA. That's all men are mortal. All Greek are men. And then all Greeks are mortal. Okay, so you see there's A, right? Or something. So this one called, so if you do all men are mortal, this red one is man, right? The blue one is mortal. We use Venn diagram. The blue one is mortal, and the red one is man. And Greek is the green one. So you know green is inside the blue. Right, so you know, okay, all Greeks are mortal. Okay, same thing. Okay, you have the different to do it, right? You can use like no reptile has fur. Okay, so this one is E, right? We talk about no reptile has fur, and reptile is the red one, right? And it's no over that. And all snake are reptiles. Snake is the green one, so it's been beyond this. So you know, no snake has fur. If you use the Venn diagram, each one will be much clearer. And then the great work Aristotle has done is he goes through every single one and then tell you which one work, which one doesn't work. Daniel, please.
You know, I'm going back to the discussion before, and I wanted to make a point.
Please.
You know, you asked whether, you know, how come we haven't learned this logic?
Okay.
But the thing is, we are learning it. And my grandson, who's 3 years old, is starting to learn it. Because from specific particulars, he starts to differentiate. You know, birds fly. Well, the dog doesn't fly. So he's developing already in kindergarten certain logic, and he's going to generalize it, but it's never formalized in the way that Aristotle does it. But implicitly, by the time kids are in grade 10, or in grade 5 or grade 6 or grade 7, they understand this logic. It's part of the language. The word some already implies that you have one group versus some other group. So I think that logic is implicit, and Aristotle is just formalizing it and putting it into a more sophisticated form. But we all learn it as we grow, this logic.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I probably some people are more clear, some people are not that clear. Probably that's the difference. Okay, so we have a 64 moods, right? So you can make a, I think in the internet, you can find that some people work hard to put everything together. And then remember, we only deal with, right, the middle one, all men are mortal, Socrates are men, and the Jordan men are. But you can reverse, okay? And this one, instead of say, mortal, all mortal are men, okay? Or you can talk about, okay, or like instead of say the all birds can fly, is all flying are birds, okay? So you can reverse on the first two, right? So basically you have 4 different, they call it figure. So in this way, we have 64 times 4, that's a 256 syllogic argument. So you have it, but Aristotle only puts 3 because he considered the 4th one is basics just reverse, because you can see the first the first one and second one, if you swap, right? If swap would become same as the first one. So in Aristotle's argument, only put a 3. but technically you have a 4. So you, for example, you can call this one all cats are mammal, okay, and you can say some all cats are mammal, okay, that's the red one as a mammal, and the cat, all cats are mammal. Some pets are not mammal, right? So that's the pet, the non-mammal. So you can draw the conclusion. Some pets are not cat, right? So that's the area. That's the area he's talking about. So then they also give the name for the one work. People give the name. That's the Baroque. Okay. So I think I don't know how many, but depend on how you're going to look at. But I think they say the 24. Only 24 are valid. But sometimes some people give a different number. But that's the best I can find out. But idea is here I want to show is we are not going to the detail, but the idea I want to do is you probably can see how Aristotle worked on this kind of thing. And I think that's a great invention and the greatness. And then by seeing this, you probably will get a good feel when you go next week, when we go to Aristotle's ethics and the politics. Both Aristotle and Plato deal with politics and ethics, but you will see, because this kind of logical thinking, and Aristotle is still logic, ethics and politics in a totally different way than Plato. So we have a few hands up. Okay, let's go from Patty and Spencer. Patty, please.
So if I understand correctly, Aristotle is acknowledging that you can create all of these formulations. However, he's also acknowledging that not all of them are equally useful in terms of efficient communication. Is that correct?
You mean this so many different kind of form of argument?
Right, and they most of them are valid, but
no, most of them are not valid. That's
no,
the
most of his observations are valid, is what I'm saying. So in doing that, he's also acknowledging that not all of these constructs or models or even particular diagrams are equally efficient in communicating whatever the idea is.
Yeah, I got your point. That's exactly okay. That's one thing I think. Okay, Aristotle not pay attention. Okay, because he only said, okay, that's assume, okay, 24 out of 256 work, okay, and then your point is some are not efficient, right? But some are. But his concern is only, at least in organ, he only concerned in work or not work. And when you talk about efficient, okay, he will deal it in so-called, his another writings, rhetoric, okay. He talking about rhetoric is the way to convince people. So of course, not all, this one you only find a truth, but the truth you cannot convince people. Okay, that's what he's talking about. Okay, so he's another book. And much later time, the 20th century, Bertrand Russell, he also make another, he also draw from the syllogism, and he talk about another thing called significance, right? So some description, some proposition are correct, but non-significant. Okay, so for example, he said the emperor of France is bald, but there's no emperor of France, right? So the statement is correct, but it's not significant. So this kind of thing is coming later. So that's why we see Aristotle is important. He started on this one, and through the 2,000 years, not only people developed some idea. For example, Kant developed his 12 category from here, and also people start to reject him. Okay, and that's why the influence is important in Aristotle.
Okay, thank you.
Spencer, please.
We're intuiting about this using set theory, which didn't exist at the time. That was developed later. I was wondering how Aristotle intuits this or characterizes it without set theory.
Without set theory, no, he doesn't have the set theory, but that's why I think he's amazing people. And then he just the reading is difficult. So I have to admit the rest of them I read most of them, but this one I have to use the secondary source. Because you can imagine, without the set theory, how, for example, without this set or set theory and the Venn diagram, how do you know which one works, which one is not working? I don't know. It will be very difficult. Marika, please.
Yeah, it seems to me, that the Aristotle is obsessed with define everything, that nothing gets missing, but
yes, that's exactly the point.
He's very clear. But do you recommend anything to read? Because I never read him. I read about him. We study a little bit in school, and everything is very simple. But it seems that because there's so much, is there anything that the one on metaphysics, or what is something that you suggest we can read?
Okay, I would say physics is not bad to read. Physics, okay. And
can I recommend something?
Please,
he said
please.
physics. He said physics, but I personally like politics, because politics, in a way, he expands on Republic of Plato. It's kind of continuation in a way, right, Jason? Wouldn't you say that?
I agree, and you will see different.
He makes like intermediate forms of government from Plato's Republic. So if you read Republic, I mean, then the natural continuation would be politics by Aristotle.
Yeah, I think I will talk about politics next week. And when I read politics, the first thing is say, hey, Mr. Plato, why don't you look around the world, right? They have so many states, they have a different system. Why Plato never consider what's going on in the real world? It just jumps through an ideal state. And Aristotle will do the different way, just like answer America's question. Aristotle will look through in the Mediterranean Sea and to the North Africa, look at every single possible political system, and then start to talk about it. So that's his method. Same as another good book to read is the Ethic, right? And when you talk about Ethic, he also goes through all different kinds of way to do it. So we will see more, in all of his writing. He built in this style, and this one is just more technical.
Jason, if I may add, we could actually note that even though Aristotle was pupil of Plato, Plato didn't appoint him his successor. That's one of the reasons, because they already split kind of, and some people think that that's one of the reasons he left Athens after his death, because he was not appointed a successor to of the academy.
Yeah, and then if I were Plato, I probably would not appoint him.
Right. Because they already split.
He disagreed with Plato, so
yes,
he wasn't so. But I thought he was more into the last Plato. I mean, the older Plato. The laws is different from the Republic. The Republic is the earliest Plato, and is one thing. And I think Plato himself contradicts
Republic
himself.
is later. The Republic is late. Plato. I don't think it's early Plato.
No. I think the laws are the latest. Plato.
Yeah,
no, I'm not saying the latest, but it's kind of in the later period.
I think that we can probably consider as middle period, middle late.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, Plato write the law. That's the last one. Okay.
Right.
And you can see the law is slightly different than the Republic, because the law is not talking about philosopher king anymore. And then just back to the question about, is he reject Plato? In many places, I would say yes. For example, a very small example is, if you were here last week, we talked about Plato, Republic. Plato doesn't like the poetry Okay, he thinks that's a mimic. Okay, so and Aristotle have another book called Poetic, right? Which is totally, I would say, it's a rejection to Plato. He said that's good. We should study it and why.
And also, wouldn't you say that Plato is idealist and Aristotle is materialist, kind of?
Well, that's another way we can say that,
Yeah.
Okay, and also interesting when you look at the Middle Ages, Christian philosophers, right? The two key persons. One is Saint Augustine of Hippos. Saint Augustine is totally Platonian. Okay, he inherit everything from Plato. Later time in the 12th, 13th century. 13th century, that's St. Thomas Aquinas, because he inherited from Aristotle. So the Christian theology totally changed because you base on Plato and based on Aristotle, you got a totally different flavor of Christian theology. So just quickly on the last part of organon, and then of course, Plato will talk about 13 different fallacies. And of course, if we go to detail, we can take about many hours, go every single one, but basically talk about fallacy, right? Fallacy basically means your logic is wrong, so we call it a fallacy. So we're not going to discuss in the detail on this one. So we will finish the organon at this moment, and I'm going to move to physics. So anything want to talk about before I move to physics?
Well, I was just wondering, because even as I'm listening to the discussion, the three thinkers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, do seem very clearly evolutionary to me. But as I listen to you, several of you speaking, I'm wondering, am I reading too much into it?
So you say they are all revolutionary?
They evolve upon each other, and then, as you've mentioned, others, yes, they build on that and they pluck from all of them. But the way they've developed the logic does seem very evolutionary to me. I'm not saying that it's smoothly evolutionary, but evolution is not smooth, is it?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah,
it's actually hard to separate Socrates from Plato. I mean, how it's like the same thing basically.
Socrates and Plato, we don't know what's real Socrates, right?
Right. We only know what Plato is saying. Yeah.
Says exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I mean, if you're going to propose something that's new or outside of what is currently accepted, I mean, what better way than to talk about a guy that is dead? I mean, we've done that over and over again throughout civilization. So, I mean, I don't get as hung up on what's Socrates and what's Plato. What I see is it's entirely possible that Plato could have largely invented Socrates so that he could take off from there. I don't know the answer, but I'm saying that's what I mean about evolutionary.
Yes, and actually you can, if you read through, you probably can tell, okay? Actually, at least I can clearly tell the difference between Socrates and Plato. Because in the early Plato, you will see, we will assume that's Socrates, okay? But later on, you don't see that much about Socrates. And in the dialogue, you will see in the early Plato, they have the dialect between Socrates and the intellector. Okay, they have a conversation, try to convince each other. In the middle Plato, a lot of time is people ask a question, and Socrates just talk for, I don't know, hours, 200 pages. Okay, that's the middle dialogue. To the later part, you will see situations like Socrates say, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Timaeus, tell us how about the world? How does the universe start? Then Timaeus talk about 200 pages, and we don't know what is Socrates. Okay, and to the last one, which is laws. They even don't have a Socrates. They have one guy called Athenian stranger. Okay, so we assume that's Plato. So you can see the Socrates voice start to change.
But I think also Aristotle is so much more than Plato, because he covers so many areas that Plato completely ignores, right? All of it. He is a scientist. I mean, Plato
Yeah,
is
that's
not.
one big part I didn't include, which is biology, right? But his biology writing is amazing. So actually, the story is this: after Plato died or retired, Aristotle left. Okay, tutoring Alexander, and then he set up his own school. Oh, I think at the beginning he started to write biology. He wanted to become a scientist, and then he set up a library, and then blah 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 blah. So so we even ignore his scientific part of Aristotle. Monica, please.
Yeah, this is just fascinating. I love it.
One quick question. I'm not very clear. I mean, Socrates had many followers. He never wrote anything. Everything that we read about Socrates is by Plato. With all these followers that he had, did anybody wrote what he was teaching, or only we have Socrates through Plato?
We
Xenophon.
also have Xenophon. We also have Xenophon.
Okay.
Xenophon. Xenophon write the Apology and also write the Symposium. Okay, and
it's very different.
Yeah, very different, very different. So we don't know which one is true. And then I think that Aristophanes, okay, also write the Socrates. Okay, but he writes to make fun of Socrates. Okay, he mocks Socrates. Okay, so for sure we know Socrates is a real man. And then he was popular, okay, he's famous during the time, okay, but what's his real teacher, we really don't know. Okay.
And he was against writing anything. He thought that once you put it in writing, you put constraint on the idea. So he was against it.
Yeah, in one of his dialogue, I think Phaedrus, right? In the Phaedrus, at the end, he and the Phaedrus are discussed. Okay, is written form or language form or dialect form is better, and Socrates is very sure written is not good, because when somebody get yours and they may misinterpret. Okay, so that's the Socrates concern.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a lot of discussion on this one, so we don't have much time left. So I think I will do this. I will do the physics quickly, and the next week we will still do the ethics and politics, which are also important. And then I will continue on today's part for this one. And the discussion is very good. And probably I have to make the third section on the Aristotle. But we will see. But next week we'll still deal with ethics and ethica and politics, and then some of this. And if we cannot cover all of this one, and if everyone's still interested in this, we can continue. Anyway, Aristotle is very important in this way. So I think we have a question about the form and the matter subject. Let me quickly just explain this one, and so we will get some idea, which is also important. And then we can discuss on this one, because some people probably think that's easy, some will think that's confusing, but I'd like, if you see this picture, the School of Athens, right? So you know which one is, this one is Plato, right? This one is Aristotle, right? Because Plato, not because of his face different, because his hand different. Plato point up, right? Aristotle point down, okay? Okay, so the difference is this. How do we know this one is apple? All right. Because according to Plato, they have the idea, they have a form of apple up there, okay? So we inherit when we were born, okay? We have idea or form. So we see apple, okay? We know that's apple, okay? So that's the way Plato thinking about. Aristotle is talking about different things, and he even had to argue, okay, in his physics. I think in his metaphysics, he argued against the form, okay, Plato. So he even spelled out Plato, okay, what's wrong, okay, his so-called the third man argument. So Aristotle's ideas, there's a form and the matter. And in the real world, his form is not on the sky, okay, it's not in the sky, not up there, it's down here. That's the form. So something has much more form, something has much more matter. So the one example is gold. It's a lot of form because it's not going to change for 1,000 years. All right. Apple has a lot of matter, not much form, because it will get rotten after, let's say, 2 weeks. And after 1 year, probably, totally disappear. So there's a lot of matter. So that's the different way of thinking, okay, between Plato and Aristotle. And another thing is about the potentiality and actuality. All right. So, for example, that's the bronze. That's potentiality because it's no form yet. Then you can make a sculpture. Okay, so that's actuality. So the idea would be God would be 100% actuality, no potentiality. The concept of infinity, okay, we will deal with this one later. Infinity is totally potential, but never actual. That's some idea on this. For example, in metaphysics, he talked about the substance and the accident. Okay, so substance has form and the matter. So that's the way he separates, and the form is actuality and the matter is potentiality. Okay, so that's some key concept. Okay, and you can see the difference when Aristotle deal with form and Plato deal with form. They deal in a totally different way. So I will pause for a few minutes, if you have a question you want to discuss, and then we probably don't have time to talk about 4 courses, okay? And then, but I will cover this one because at least I think that's a very important concept. If you know the 10 categories, 4 courses, and the syllogism, and the form and the matters, actuality and the potentiality. And I think that we can claim, and anybody can talk about this name, we can claim we know 50% of Aristotle. So Greg, do you agree? So if you can talk about the 4 courses and the 10 category, syllogism, probably you know 50% of Aristotle.
Yeah, probably.
So any question or anyone want to discuss this one about the potentiality and the form and the matter? Patty, please.
Well, I only half jokingly made the point in the chat,
Okay.
based on your last slide.
Okay.
Is again in this evolutionary thing. There's actually room for more than one gender among man, and only one ideal gender in Aristotle. He allows for a greater potentiality, whereas Plato would be always looking for the one ideal gender. So that is a strong basis for all patriarchy from thenceforward, right? I mean, again, I never know if I'm reading too much into it, but you could see that in that last slide you had where they had the one apple versus the category of apples. So the one apple in if Plato were saying it, there would be an ideal human being, which I have a feeling would end up being man. And versus in the world of human beings, there's much more variability, shall we say.
I will say both are sexist. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't see anyone as a better.
Well, they as human beings, yes, would have been thinking in terms of men. What I'm saying, though, in the evolution of their thinking,
oh yeah.
One can see the potentiality for more than one particular ideal human being.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're having a world of human beings. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
But unless you were open to thinking of all human beings as human beings, which I doubt was happening anywhere at the time, or at least in Greece, you're not going to be thinking the way that's what I'm saying. I'm only half serious because, I mean, I think that a lot of what we're talking about became a firm foundation for the patriarchy that's been so dominant in the Western Hemisphere ever since. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, yes, it's all dominated by the.
But wasn't Aristotle who said that the women were imperfect men, and also it's not that they are in fault because they thought like that, but people, I mean, after them, they choose to pick up those things. So
yes,
I think
I'm not disagreeing, Marika. What I'm saying, though, is that it could have, if somebody was a little more bold, or maybe somebody was and we just haven't read about them because they were all assassinated, but you can see the possibility for more variability in the way Aristotle is developing it. Not that Aristotle himself was interested in including imperfect males, but that nevertheless, in the evolution of his thinking and his categorizations, the foundation for allowing for the variability was there.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So he paved the road for the future development. That's
if I recall, Aristotle talks more about this in Nicomachean Ethics, about differences in gender and relationships between that and skill sets and practical virtue and stuff. So it might be worth bringing it up next time if we talk about ethics.
Well, that'd be great. If you can contribute this.
It's probably going to be pretty offensive to women.
Oh yeah, no, it's not much. It's not better.
Epicurus was very positive. He said that there were, he invited women to his school. So there were some that they were.
I don't know. He invite women to the school or not. I just don't think so.
And slaves too. I mean,
it's been a while since I've read Nicomachean
Yeah.
Ethics, but I think that Aristotle says something along the lines of women are incapable of practical virtue, but are capable of the contemplative virtue, which he says is better. And if whether or not that's a good thing to say, I think is it's bad. But it's not as cut and dry as Plato is.
Yeah, this part I agree with you. Because in the Plato even said if you were coward, coward man, you will become woman, next time. So that's in Plato's, in Plato's dialogue. So again, if you talk about the gender issue, and then there's no way they can defend, they are virtuous. So.
And Greg, I'm not offended by it. I'm quite used to it. I've been a woman all my life.
Yes, I appreciate
nowadays things are much different, even though it may not be to your satisfaction, but it's incomparable.
Right.
But anyway, when I make the slide, usually I try to change it from men to people, but sometimes I forget, so yeah, it's once in a while people will mention, but just
again, it's not about offense. It's just sort of, from my perspective, it's more like, how could, I can understand how and why they could have missed the fact that they're incomplete without the rest of humanity, but yeah, so it's he was a brilliant thinker. It just didn't occur to him to actually embrace everything in his environment. He decided to find certain characters out of it. So that was the basis for the patriarchal habituation, shall we say? But his philosophy does not support that patriarchal habituation.
Yeah, he was also slave owner. So I don't know if we look at that part. I mean, never occurred to him that it would be
Oh, exactly.
unfair.
That's the same thing, right, Greg?
Right.
It's the same exact thing. It's like slaves, women, all lesser creatures.
Yeah,
And
it was
so-
facts of life at the time, you know. They just
exactly.
grew up on this, yeah.
Exactly. And we over centuries, it's been repeatedly capitulated to, and I can't help but wonder if that's partly because, well, look, Aristotle, he made so much sense. Look, you know, he developed this system of logic, so clearly he couldn't have missed anything. Again, I tend to like retro engineer things, so I may be completely off base, but I think it's worth considering.
Well, as a matter of fact, he was wrong on many things, and his influence, you know, he was right in many things, but he was also wrong in many things. And his influence basically, I would think, created a lot of obstacles for science later on, because people were so, his authority was so big that you know, it was hard to overcome. And so, well, everybody has limitations. Everybody.
Yeah, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm just, like I say, to me, it's always been fascinating that we could have for so long existed in a way of thinking that believed that could see itself as incomplete unless it included all of the specimens that are human beings. Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, I agree with you. I see the obstacles, and it fascinates me that somebody who could think so clearly could miss so much.
Thank you for this subject. I think about Greg talk about this one. I believe you talk about like a Newtonian mechanics. So that's also I probably will talk about next week, you know, or I will make another section to talk about. That's also very interesting part because Aristotle's physics, he talk about motion in a totally different way, and then, you know, in a way we can say it prevent us to thinking about Newtonian way, okay, in a way, okay, but you know, it's up to your interpretation, but you know, in a way you can see, you know, that's the reason. We are almost running out of time, and then we have Fred. You know, please, thank you for waiting.
I see you have the slide up of Aristotle's four causes.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you plan to address entelechy, which exists somewhere, I think, in between potentiality and actuality. Is this something that we'll discuss next time?
I think we will discuss next time. I probably will put, let me see, you know, probably I will put this one and politics next time, and then let's talk about ethics. I make another section for Aristotle. Seems a lot of people are interested in Aristotle, and according to Patty, am I right? You said Aristotle are more interesting than Plato?
I'm not more interesting. I just find that, like I say, the thinking, I can see the thinking as brilliant, especially if I place it in the time. But that's the part that blows my mind, is that this man could have been such a clear, brilliant thinker and yet have missed so much and just continued on down a road that allowed him to keep leaving out so much. And yes, in the long run, the brilliance of his thinking, I think, blinded human beings from seeing other things for longer than it might otherwise have taken. I don't know if I'm making sense, truly.
Of course, it makes sense. And then I believe your feeling probably will change from time to time, because sometimes you see it's great, sometimes you see. But anyway, they all great, put this way. They do a lot of work, and I cannot imagine a person write so much, so many things, both Plato and Aristotle. Okay, that's so many things, And they both are difficult to read, and both are interesting. Even Plato, at beginning I hate Plato's, and when I read a lot of Plato's dialogue, and I start to see it's fun, a lot of information over there. And especially last week, for this opportunity, I start to present, and I start to reorganize what I have read, and I find out it's a lot. I just have to say they are great. But anyway, thank you everyone, and sorry for today's a lot of interruption on the bummer, and I'm going to go back to set up my account to make it more secure, because I did make it a little bit loose, this week, because some people complain as they've been trying to get in, but he say you have been removed, so it cannot. So if you are being removed, I believe all here everyone is a good person. If you have been removed and then by mistake, just send the message to me. I will bring you in. So sometimes we just overwhelmed, and then we just have to quickly kick out.
Yeah, my guess is that some of those people that are complaining are probably the ones that are trying to get back in so they can continue bombing.
No. Actually, it's a real person. This is real person. Yeah, that's a real person. Yeah. I know, because I know. I know.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How do we message you, Jason? How do we message you?
Can you use the
meetup messenger.
Yeah. Okay. And then thank you everyone. And the next week.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, and then I hope I make it everything clear. And but so I just have to say it's not an easy subject on the syllogism, the square of opposition, all this kind of thing. It's a little bit technical, but I will try my best. And please let me know. Okay.
Very, very exciting though. And I'm so sorry if I slow you down. I'm really sorry.
No. Actually, I would prefer have a few discussion, and then because it's unlike the real class. We have the people, have the similar background. Everybody have a different background. Everybody have a different kind of interest. So, and that's the way, we can learn from each other. And actually, I constantly talk about this. It's so many times I feel I'm the person benefit most, because by you guys ask question or comment, bring me to think about another thing I have never think about before. So anyway, thank you, and see you next week. And I will.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Ciao.
All the best.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.
The problem is this stuff keeps me awake because it energizes me.
All right.
Blessings all. Have a good evening.
All right. See you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.